So I want to speak about something I didn't hear too many people talking about, but our good brother Larry Hoover had an appeal where he was trying to get released from prison early. But you know the dominant white society and white supremacy wasn't trying to let that go down. They was trying to make it like he's unreformable, he's unredeemable, you know, that he's still this bad person and he hasn't learned his lesson, you know, the typical things that the dominant white society does and try to attach to black people because unfortunately when we as black people make a mistake in our lives, that mistake will follow us through the entirety of our lives until death, you know, and that's just not fair. You know, that's not right, in my opinion, at all. Because people from the dominant white society, white people, when they commit crimes and things of that nature, they're looked at as redeemable. They're able to get a second chance at redemption. So why is it that our good brother Larry Hoover isn't able to get a second chance at redemption? Because me personally, I believe our brother Larry Hoover would be a good asset to the black community, especially black Chicago, where his roots are heavy. You know, the young people up there, the young brothers and sisters up there in Chicago will be more willing to listen to Larry Hoover and take advice from him because they know this ain't no square or cornball, you know, that they can't relate to. They'll be able to relate to Larry Hoover and see themselves through Larry Hoover so they would take his advice, you know, because a lot of the times our youth don't want to hear nobody just telling them to do something when they haven't actually lived the stuff they telling them to do. You know, they haven't lived the kind of life and dealt with the circumstances that the youth have dealt with. So, you know, that's corny to me. You can't speak upon something that you never lived. It's not corny that you didn't live a life of crime. That's not what I'm saying, but it's corny to be speaking about something you have no real world experiences on relating to the things that you speaking about. How can you tell a person to change from something and you never dealt with the circumstances that you telling them to change from? This is my point, and the youth will be able to see themselves through Larry Hoover, and they'll take Larry Hoover's advice. If you ask me, he'll be a great instrument to bring about some change and some healing up there in Chicago to the black community. But this is something that they don't want to happen. They don't want no change to be brought, you know, especially not to the black community because they happy the dominant white society, white supremacy with the status quo, with things being with things being the way they are because they stand to gain from that. They don't stand to gain from no change and no healing in the black community. And this is why they want to demonize our brother Larry Hoover and make him as if he's some kind of monster, which he not. You know, the brother that served his time. He didn't pay. He did the time for the crime. Now y'all just trying to milk this thing out so he can spend the rest of his life behind bars. And I don't respect that. I don't respect that one bit because that brother could bring about some change and some healing, especially up there in Chicago, to our people up there. And y'all not allowing him to have redemption, and he's redeemed himself. He done spent time behind bars for the crimes that you guys charged him on, and now you guys is just trying to bleed the time out to make him spend the rest of his life behind bars. And I don't respect that because he'd be a great asset to bring about change up there in the black community. But I got the audio and the video of this family, and we're gonna walk through and talk about this thing. Fair use.
Larry Hoover, through his lawyer seeking early release from multiple life sentences, a special program passed by Congress known as the First Step Act, in some cases allowing early release for certain rehabilitated prisoners. Wearing a tan long-sleeve shirt, glasses, and a gray beard, a shackled Larry Hoover in Florence, Colorado, appearing on the monitors in a Dirksen federal courtroom here in Chicago, the 73-year-old founder of the notorious gangster Disciple Street Gang, testifying from the ADX Supermax prison in Colorado. I'm a completely different person than the man who went to prison in 1997, Hoover said in a low voice. I'm very reflective here at ADX. You're locked up at least 21 hours a day. I have no desire to run the GDs or to be involved in any criminal activity. I'm past that part of my life. But the U.S. Attorney's Office.
This brother, 70 some years old. I don't believe he's the same person either as when he went in there in the 90s. You know what I mean? A lot of the times they want to make black people as if we can't be redeemed and we can't change, you know, when we commit something in our lives. They want to hold us to that the entirety of our lives. And this just ain't fair because it's double standards in law. You know, white people are able to be redeemed. We see it all the time of them releasing all of these notorious Italian mobsters, you know, them getting out and they're redeemable. Why is it that, you know, our brother Larry Hoover isn't redeemable? Because y'all play the game of I might not say so and there's double standards in law. And I don't respect that, but let's continue.
But the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois vehemently opposing the early release of
Of
Hoover,
course, y'all
arguing
will
that
vehemently
he
oppose
still
it.
asserts leadership when it comes to the gangster disciples, also known as the GDs, in the courtroom.
They said he still asserts leadership over the GDs. He don't assert leadership over a damn thing. This is a 70-some-year-old man. You know what I mean? Stop trying to attach him to criminality and gangs and things of that nature. This man has did his time, and it's time for him to be released. You know what I mean? He's redeemable. You know what I mean? He got worth this. Our brother Larry Hoover. He could bring about some change and healing to the black community, and young people will be willing to listen to him and take his advice because they know he just ain't some willy nilly just telling them things off the top of their head to do this, that, and the third, and never live nothing to tell anybody and give anybody no advice. But let's continue.
Federal prosecutor Julia K. Schwartz arguing that Hoover's done more damage to the city of Chicago than any defendant that's come through here before. In today's government,
they say Larry Hoover has done more damage to the city of Chicago than any defendant that's come through there before. I beg to differ. You guys had notorious Italian mafia members such as Al Capone, Frank Nitti, and these guys are far worse than our brother Larry Hoover. Our brother Larry Hoover deserves a shot at redemption. You know, he done did his time and stopped trying to, hold something to our brother for the entirety of his life and make it like he ain't redeemable, because I don't respect that, because he'll be a great asset and tool to bring about change up there in Chicago. You know what I mean? And the black people, period, here in America. I believe his story, is one that needs to be told, and he needs to get out there and tell his story and use his story to bring about change.
done more damage to the city of Chicago than any defendant that's come through here
I
before.
don't agree with
In
that.
today's government filing, the United States of America versus Larry Hoover, aka the chairman and the king, the feds arguing, quote,
They just had to throw that out there, aka the chairman and the king. And this is to demonize our brother in the eyes of the public. Stop trying to attach these names to our brother. Call him what his mother named him, and that's Larry Hoover. Stop trying to perpetuate a negative stigma to our brother by putting out these names that have nothing to do with him. He's Larry Hoover, who his mom named him to be. But let's continue.
Hoover has well earned his life sentence, and he is not the type of defendant Congress intended to benefit in enacting the First Step Act. Indeed,
he deserved his life sentence, they said, or something to that nature. And he's not the kind of person that Congress intended, to let out with this First Step Act. I don't agree with that. And I don't respect that, because this brother done did his time, and, he's a changed man. He ain't the same man. Nobody's the same from when they were 20 some years old to when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. You should have a renewal and a change of the mind in a positive way. And I believe our brother has had a renewal and a changing of the mind, but they don't want him to get out because they like the status quo, the things the way they are. They don't want to bring about no change in the black community because it benefits them to keep the black community in the state of affairs that it's in. But let's continue.
benefit in enacting the First Step Act. Indeed, if he were sentenced today, Hoover would receive the same mandatory life sentence. But after today's hearing, Larry Hoover's loved ones and attorneys, along with many supporters, arguing that Hoover is a changed man and can do much good if he's released.
It was good to hear his voice. It sounds
Brother Hoover is a changed man, if you ask me, and he can do much good with release, because his story is one that, our young youth brothers and sisters can be able to see themselves through, and they'll be willing to take his advice. This ain't some willy nilly just telling people to do something that has no real world experience or application to tell people to do anything. This brother really lived it, was really, in them trenches, and really can bring about change to the black community. And they don't want this to happen. This is kind of like, what Arnold Schwarzenegger did to our brother Tukey out there, executed him, and Tukey was a changed man. Tukey's story would have been able to wake up the minds of our people on a massive level, because they know he ain't no square or no cornball, so to speak. They would take his advice because they'd be able to see himself through that. And this is why they don't want to let these kinds of brothers out, these kinds of brothers that, will be really able to affect some true change in the black community. And truth be told, I don't respect Arnold Schwarzenegger for not letting our brother Tukey out and executing our brother Tukey. That's one thing I don't respect, because our brother Tukey was, a completely changed man. Everybody has a changing of the mind, or at least you should have. You're not the same as when you're 24 to when you're 54. This it's a changing of the mind that takes place along in there, and I don't agree with when they deem our people as, um, that we can't be redeemed, we can't be back into society and live a healthy, productive life. Damn all that. When people from the dominant white society get to do it all day, they release Sammy the Bull and a lot of these other gangsters that done did some heinous things, and they were redeemable. So why is it that someone black is unredeemable? Because you're white and you say so? I guess that's the name of the game. But let's continue.
His voice, it sounds like to me he was a bit nervous, but it's his life that he's dealing with.
He is not associated with the gang and hasn't been for many, many decades. But he probably has some insights into how we can make life better for young people so that they don't turn to gangs.
The parties will be back in court in October. At the Dirksen Federal Building, Julian Cruz, WGN News.
Scotprint provides hundreds.
Yeah, our brother Larry Hoover ain't involved with no gang. 70 some year old man. He just trying to get out and make a change and really, bring about change to his community and black people in general, I think. So yeah, our brother deserves to be let out of jail. He certainly did his time for the crime, and I want to say free our brother Larry Hoover because everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's exempt from that. But I like to talk about the circumstances. Don't just demonize somebody in the eyes of the public. There's a lot of circumstances that go into making people who they are, such as injustice and oppression that we face. We don't blame everything on that, but we face that a lot of times coming out of the black community, the struggle that we come from. And a lot of times, some of our people become products of our environment, and this is just it is what it is. Not to make excuses, but let's talk about the system of racism, white supremacy, more so that creates these elements. And that's not just demonize people without telling the full story in totality, because there's unseen elements such as racism, white supremacy, and things that go on in the black community to create these elements. And Larry Hoover is a changed man, and he deserves redemption because he will be able to enact some true change in the black community as a whole. And I want to say, free our brother Larry Hoover, and he's certainly redeemable. So stop that nonsense of saying our brother ain't redeemable. Free Larry Hoover. Peace.